Hello, welcome back to the channel where I have a brand new Maserati GranTurismo, but not any old new Maserati GranTurismo. The gentle hum you may hear in the background will tell you this is a very different kind of Maserati indeed. Welcome to the inside then of the new Maserati GranTurismo. Not powered by an internal combustion engine. It is Maserati's first battery electric vehicle, but the fact is it still looks like a GranTurismo, and that will have a V6 engine in two different flavours. They don't want it to be too weird. Now, I'm afraid I can't show you too much in here. I've got the camera much closer to me than usual. Sorry about that. And they don't want me to show you the interior of their new luxury car for another month or two, I think. This is a prototype, but I will tell you, it seems perfectly nicely put together to me. There's a lot of leather in here. There's a lot of nice stitching in here. Right down here, there's a big touch screen across the top and a smaller touch screen below that does the climate control, and the one above does all of the other, well, you know, everything else as things do. So I've got a phone thing here and a radio control there, but the interesting bit will come when I twiddle one of the knobs on the steering wheel. Ooh, did you hear the noise change? Because then it brings up all of the sort of drive mode gubbins. There are a few drive modes. So I can go from max range through to GT, through to Sport, and through to Corsa. And as you go through, things get angrier and angrier. Again, max range should give you the full, oh crikey, what is it, 450 kilometres of range. The ride height changes as you go, because this car is on standard air springs with adaptive dampers, so the damping changes, the spring height changes, the steering weight changes, the noise changes, and also the sort of throttle response changes, and then finally traction and stability control change. So between this car's three motors, there is the potential for 1200 horsepower, because they are 400 horsepower each. There's one at the front which has a differential, there are two at the back. There's no differential because one is for each wheel. There's double wishbone suspension at the front, which is aluminium. There's an aluminium 5-link suspension setup at the rear. The body is 65% aluminium. The rest of it is a mix of steel and magnesium, but the all-up weight of this car is 2,250 kilos. The reason for that is the fact that there is a battery in a sort of T-shape that runs all the way through the transmission tunnel across the back of the back seats, and that is like more than 90 kilowatt hours total and nearly 90 kilowatt hours of usable range. But the remarkable thing is that even though all of those motors together can produce up to 1200 horsepower, this battery pack, 800 volt battery pack as it is, with a maximum 270 kilowatt charging rate, effectively puts out enough power that it can allow 760 metric horsepower, 750 brake, through the mix of these batteries. The mix of these motors. It can be 100% rear wheel drive, it can be up to 50% split front and rear. Maserati says it is working on battery technology that will at some point be able to unleash the full 1200 horsepower of all of these motors, but it is the battery tech that's holding that back. Nonetheless, this is a car that will do the 0 to 100 kilometers an hour, 62 mile an hour sprint in about 2.9 seconds. I mean, I don't know how much more power you need than that. Certainly, you don't need much more power than that on what is a very wet racetrack that I've never been to before in my life. But we'll see how we go. So I'm in Corsa mode. ESC off, stability control off is showing. It's not actually off. It allows a certain amount of slip before it comes back in. But there is another ESC off button, and then there is a drift mode button. What's it like as a Grand Tourer? Because that's what Maserati make. They make Grand Tourers, they say. Well, it's hard to judge the ride because it's a racetrack, but it feels all right. This is a big car. It's 4.9 metres long, 1.92 I think metres wide. So it's quite a big car, and at 2.25 tonnes, which is 450 kilos more than an internally combusted one. It's also a heavy one. That's not necessarily bad for ride quality, and also this is a low BEV. This is the lowest battery electric vehicle in production, so it's got a low centre of gravity. It's got a small moment of inertia from that point of view. So the ride, as far as I can tell, feels nice. You can't turn off the noise, and that's okay. It's making a not unappealing whir. But as you go through the drive modes, it gets louder or quieter. and it detects if you're on a motorway sitting at a steady cruise, and it turns the volume down. It steers very smoothly, really nicely actually, very, very smoothly, and it turns nicely. For a heavy car, it turns very nicely. I suspect there's some sort of torque vectoring at work, because what they could do is they could slow down one of those rear wheels if they wanted and overspeed the outside one to help it turn. And that's one of the cool things you can do with torque vectoring of an electric vehicle that is harder to do in an internally combusted vehicle. And things respond really well, so really quickly. Electronic systems respond much more quickly than an internal combustion engine when it comes to traction, stability control, torque vectoring, all that sort of dynamic stuff that could allow an EV to be a spectacular driver's car. So I've now switched off further the electronic stability control, which I'm told leaves things alone even more. There's some understeer, but you just poke through. There's some oversteer, and it's really mild in both forms, and it's very well judged. For the fact that this car is still, as I drive it, 6-7 months away from arriving at customers, it feels well sorted. There are things to sort out. There are things still to sort out. I think not least of which is the fact that, you know, all of that testing stuff that you've got to go through to make sure that it arrives in customers and doesn't do what it does, what prototypes do at test tracks when they just sort of go, oh, you know, no, I can't do this anymore, I've given it up. There's all that malarkey to go through. Pricing wise, it's going to be quite expensive. My understanding is that a standard V6 engine car will be 130, 150 grand. This might be closer to 200 in electric form. Be intrigued to try. I always loved the old GranTurismo, the way it looked, and actually I quite liked the way it drove, and I like the way that V8 sounded too. I'm intrigued to try the internally combusted versions as well, but as a fairly unique proposition, I think. I don't think there is a BEV that does quite what this does. The closest to it is maybe the Porsche Taycan, I guess, the really quick versions of that, but it's a very striking car, but I'm not sure it's quite such a good looking car as this is. This offers a unique proposition, and it's very benign, and it's very enjoyable, and it's also, I suppose we should do it, shouldn't we, 750 horsepower, that's 50 kph. Well, that's 105 kph, just like that, just added. It's got that sort of thing that EVs do, where your brain goes, what's going on? I can't quite cope with this. And it's a slightly uncomfortable level of speed. I don't know what 1200 horsepower would be like in one of these. But so far, I think they are doing a splendid job with this. I like it. I'm looking forward to trying the finished one. I'm looking forward to trying the finished one with the V6 too. But by 2030, Maseratis will not have an engine. They will have electric propulsion. The big challenge, as I see it, for manufacturers whose engines are quite large parts of their appeal, Maserati, Ferrari, Porsche to an extent, Jaguar, whatever they're doing, there are manufacturers whose the sound is all part of the thing. You know, they have built part of their heritage on the way they sound. What do? How do they get the driving appeal without that piece of equipment that is so central to their character? Does this feel like a Maserati? Doesn't feel like a trad Maserati, but the fact that it is such good fun and so benign in terms of its handling, maybe we're looking at a new type of old type of Maserati, and maybe that's all right. So thank you for joining me. We've got video reviews pretty much every week. We're at autocar.co.uk all the time. The magazine is available as it has been every week since 1895. Thank you very much for joining me. I'd love an up thumb and a subscribe to the channel. Click the bell icon, you don't miss one. And I will see you next time.